and we were like, oh, it's such good news. Like it's not a Met. And then I remember being like, wow, like the bar has got so low that it's better to have two separate cancers than one. Hi, so I'm Shiva Sharma. I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I was diagnosed with rectal and renal cancer in 2024. Back in 2023, we moved from England to Canada. Um, I'm a family doctor, and we were moving with my family, my wife, and my three kids. So obviously, very stressful time. And throughout my life, I've always had trouble just with my bowels and stress, and so yeah, didn't think too much of it. Always had that kind of problem down below with you know uh, with stress, I guess. But yeah, I couldn't think of a more stressful time than moving with three small kids, and a lot of those symptoms like hemorrhoids, just kind of vague tummy pain, but nothing really, no blood, just very boring. Um, kind of came up, and they didn't go away, and that was the problem. I guess, like in retrospect, I was having back pain, but just nothing specific, nothing very standoutish, I'd like to think, as a physician myself, weren't any big red flags. And yeah, I guess a little embarrassingly, it turned out to be cancer. Um, the reason I went for a colonoscopy was basically because I had a friend whose wife, unfortunately, again, also very young, diagnosed with a different kind of cancer. And I thought to myself, well, I'm 40. What would I say to my own patients? Okay, I should go for a colonoscopy. I had it done and just woke up to the biggest shock of my life. Um, I was, before I worked in family medicine, I worked in general surgery. So I'd seen and done colonoscopies on patients, operated on them, and I just knew as soon as I woke up, something wasn't right. There weren't any pamphlets there to be like, oh, we're going to manage your hemorrhoids, or we're going to, do this or that. And I was just thinking to myself, yeah, this is it. This is not going to be a good day. And sure enough, got taken back to a very quiet room, which further, I just remember that and waiting, and then getting the news. And it's so funny because like certain parts of the day are just a bit of a haze with all the anesthetic and everything, but that moment I was like, I just remember crystal clear every little bit, and then waiting for my wife to come pick me up, and I just knew that like she was not going to expect this. And um yeah, so I suppose in retrospect, um I don't know what I would have done differently. I think, luckily for me, I was somebody who just knew, like I said, I've seen patients, I've had my own patients like this, and I was just like, well, I should better get this looked at. I had CT MRIs within a week, met with the surgeon, who, yeah, just was putting everything together, and then met with the oncologist, and yeah, it was just coordinating everything and just trying to stay as normal as I can for like the kids. Like all my kids are under, or at the time, all under 7 years old, So like it was like, okay, well, we just have to carry on. Like we just have to pretend like everything's okay, even like even though I'm like, okay, I feel like just sitting in my bed and not doing anything, And but then like I look back at those pictures and it's like, okay, we gotta smile. We gotta just pretend like, this is just going on. But um so the next step was, yeah, getting those scans, which was just, absolutely, what is this gonna show now? You know? Like what's the next thing? And then it showed this lump on my kidney as well. I was like, oh great, okay. you know? So it's like, is this a metastases? Is this, we don't know. Gonna have to do a biopsy. It's like, okay, well, let's get that done. And then, then they're like, oh, we need to do another scan because there's like another lump on on your femur bone. And I'm like, okay, right, let's do that. So they're like, oh, it doesn't look like anything. I'm like, yeah, well, nothing looks like anything now, like we can't take anything for granted. We've moved past that stage now. So it's like, okay, I got to go for another scan for that. And then at that point, I was like, can we just not scan anything anymore? Because every time you put me through a scanner, you're finding something. So it was like, let's just get these blinkers on and let's just deal with what we got. But thankfully, that bony thing happened to be nothing. And then the kidney thing turned out to be just another cancer on its own. Just happened to be picked up. Again, no symptoms, no blood, nothing. Just there. And then I was like, oh, it's having some back pain, and I was like, I'm carrying around kids like half the time, so I'm like, why wouldn't you have back pain? But anyways, yeah. And then I just remember like, oh, it's such good news. Like it's not a met. And then I remember being like, wow, like the bar has got so low that it's better to have two separate cancers than one. I think the overall plan after like meeting with everyone, colorectal surgeon, urologist, oncologist, radiation oncologist, all the nurses and everyone. So the plan then is, okay, you're gonna get chemo radiation. The chemo is going to be tablet form, and I think it was 6 weeks of radiation every day, 5 days on 2 days off. And yeah, like great, okay, sounds good. And then we're going to decide, we'll see how everything goes, and then we're going to decide either more chemo or surgery or whatever. So, okay. So um, meet with the radiation oncologist. We get everything in place, get my little tattoos done, which was unbelievably painful. These three little dots, I don't know why, a mix of ticklish and painful. But anyways, get the first lot of that done, and that's when I was like, so much blood. And I just remember like walking around a hardware store and having to use the bathroom and like just the most nauseating experience seeing that. And I was like, oh my God, is this going to be like 6 weeks of this? Like, you know, I I don't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, is this chemo? Is this just from I don't know. And I was just like, yeah, I'm never coming back to this hardware store again. 'Cause just like you start getting these associations of like places and smells and everything, and it's all like really vivid. Anyways, thankfully that all settled down, and didn't really come on after that with the radiation. So then the tablets, which was the chemo tablets, thankfully they said like, look, we'll just go with the chemo tablets. It's just to make the radiation work better. It's like great, but I guess the main thing was like nausea. She was like unbelievable nausea, not like vomiting, but just did not feel like eating anything. And then the other thing was like just having to drink so much water to get the radiation done. Every morning, like driving down, and you've got like your window to get the radiation done. I'm driving like 30 minutes, bladder's got to be absolutely full. You feel nauseous and like, yeah, just the anxiety of being caught in morning traffic and trying to get to this place on time and not waste everyone's time by not having a full bladder, or having to stop because like, I can't hold it. So you kind of feel like, oh, am I letting people down? Is someone not going to get, like, you have all these like feelings about like, I'm lucky to have these options. I'm lucky to be able to go through this, and you don't want to waste it. And you know, um, and at the same time, going to like the chemo hospital or the radiation wing of the hospital, and you're just surrounded by people with cancer at various stages. So like that was a big side effect. Like mentally, just seeing people going through the same thing you are at different stages. and you've got this big question mark in your head about like, is that going to be me? You know, that was really hard to deal with. Um, the other side effects then were like, yeah, a bit of like tingling, numbness in the fingers, but nothing too bad. A few weeks before, like the surgeon said to me, like, you're gonna have to have an ileostomy. And I was just like, yeah, I know. And he's like, yeah, well, like, you're all right with that. And I was like, again, at my point, I'm like, I want like maximal therapy, right? Like, I am like, I totally trust you. You know, it's not ideal. Like, nobody likes the idea of having like a bag and all that, but when the alternative is right, having a leak from like where they join stuff up or having more problems down the road, I was like, no, I'm totally good with that. Surgery took a lot out of me because they did the kidney surgery at the same time, uh, and they did the bowel surgery, so that was like 8 hours of operating time. Um, and I just remember coming back to the ward and just being absolutely out of it. Like, you know, it was dark out. That's all I remember. Like it was nighttime by the time I got back. And um, yeah, it was sore. I'll say that. But obviously, like, it was going to be. Um, yeah, it took about a week to get out of hospital, which is probably a bit longer than anticipated, but, I think I kind of needed it personally. And it was great to be in a place where, like, they're not kicking you out. Like, that to have that luxury where it's not like, you got to go now. Like, I think it was good to get out, but yeah, they allowed me to recover. Um, and everyone there, yeah, was amazing about it. So, I think like I was probably going to leave, and then the psychiatrist, she knew me, and she's like, you're a stoic person, and like, you're not going to say when you're in pain, and she's like, stay a couple days, you know. And I think like that's amazing to have someone advocating for you in that way. The post-operatively, it was like, okay, time to get better. Um, I'm like, you like physically and mentally, emotionally, everything, like you're trying to recover from that. You're waiting on test results. Uh, like, is everything going to be fine with your lymph nodes? Is like anything unexpected coming up? Like, you're waiting on these things, and you know, it's yeah, trying to get back physically where I was. You're like, okay, I gotta eat, I gotta, and it's just eating like the blandest food now with that ostomy, and I love my food, like, you know, um, and it's like, oh, I can't eat anything I want to eat, you know, like all I can eat is rice pudding, and I'm like, I never want to see rice pudding again, and it's like delicious and all, but like when you eat like 20 days in a row of rice pudding, it's like, no thanks, you know. But yeah, so had to change the diet. Um, and yeah, I just did a lot of pacing around, like as my exercise, like, in my backyard and walking around the neighborhood. And, you're like, how far can I go? And you're like, I don't want to like, you know, push it too far. But anyways, I was just, um, yeah, getting used to the ostomy was partly getting used to eating again. You're just figuring stuff out, like stupid little things like, okay, when I empty the bag, it's like I'm gonna put tissue paper here, and I'm gonna have this here, and oh, don't put it on this side because then I'm reaching, and then it's like, oh no, now I've got stuff on my sleeve, and I'm like, you're just like you're figuring these things out, and like you figure it out pretty quickly because you only make that mistake once, or um, yeah, it just becomes like normal, the new normal for you for like, well, for me for like a year basically, and what can I say? Like you get like a grant here that helps you pay for some of the stuff, but this stuff's expensive. Like, like I'm looking at the bills on it, and it's like I don't know what people do who can't afford it because like it is really expensive. Anyways, that's an aside, but um, yeah, like I think the big fear for me was like being out in public and having to like change this and, you know, using like in the end, it's like, I think in the beginning I was like just going into like the regular like bathrooms and things like that. And I was like, I wonder, can I use the disabled one? Like, does this count? Like, because if someone sees me walk in, they're like, oh, why is that guy going in there? But then in a way, you're like, I'm trying to like rationalize, do I need to do that? You know, like, is it okay to do that? You don't want to get like harassed by someone, be like, you shouldn't be going in there. But I think sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. It's these silly things that go through your head, you know, like, but and in the end, like the I had to do some more chemotherapy tablets after the surgery. So, you know, like the same thing, the tiredness with that, the nausea wasn't as bad, but you know, got the immunotherapy at the same time, so a year of that. And that was more for the renal cancer. Um, with all the testing, they were like, look, you know, you're eligible to get it. It's funny the small things that people say that make such a big difference in you mentally. So I was still in hospital, and the oncologist came by just to say hi and see how I was doing. And all he said was like, "Congratulations, you're cancer free now." That feeling, I know it meant so much for my wife to hear that, and it meant a lot for me to hear that. You know, I was still in a little bit of a daze, I think, but you know, post-operatively, but it stuck with me. You know, it stuck with us. Like, okay, this is it. Like, now we're starting fresh again. Um, and it, I mean, yeah, I get scans every 6 months. You know, another colonoscopy at the end, you know, regularly now will be the new way forward. Um, and, you know, like I know you can't predict the future. You don't know how things are going to be, but like, you know, if you ask me, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I can say like, yeah, I'm cancer free, you know? My oncologist told me that like 2 days out or 3 days out. Um, and as far as I know, like, you know, he's right. So, you know, do I get anxious like when there's a scan or like something? Like, yeah, it seems like every time, like maybe that's just in my head, but every time like I'm going for something, like something else, another symptom crops up, you know, and it, yeah, that's scanxiety that everybody talks about. Like, it's real, but like, does it cause me to have other symptoms? Like, I don't know. Maybe it does. You don't think about your own mortality or anything like that. There's like an innocence that I feel like, yeah, you just lose where I can't, it's hard to just listen to things or see things and it doesn't go right back to cancer. You know, like listening to a podcast and like you, like someone makes like some, like, not even like it's not a joke about cancer, but a joke about life. And you're like, you kind of start reflecting on that, or it just triggers you like not triggers like, oh my God, I can't deal with this sort of thing, but it's like it just yeah, your mind goes to, hmm, will I ever be 90 years old? You know, will I ever be, you know, get to that stage in my life? Maybe, but you know, not many people get to like 90 anyways. Um, but that innocence about things, yeah. Like watching like a movie trailer and it's like, oh, that person's got cancer, and it's like, oh, great. Like, do I really want to watch this? Or is this going to be like a real downer kind of thing where like I would have watched it in the past? There's that innocence that goes, you know. I I I did a lot of like research on myself, you know, self audit is kind of like how I think about it, where like the it's traumatic. It's so traumatic. It's post traumatic stress. That's how it was explained to me, you know, and it is like it 100% is. And, you know, there's lots of different things you can do for that. And you kind of have to just do it like journaling and writing and doing these kind of things. And I'm like, I never did that. And I like never thought about doing that. And then, you know, you got to do it though. You just like the same way you got to trust your surgeon, you got to trust that inner monologue in your head. You got to trust that therapist or oncologist or whoever that tells you like you got to work on these things because like that's going to help your recovery. Positivity, positivity is definitely a luxury in life, with your health, with everything. I think that's what we have to like really prioritize in life is, you know, look, you can just have bad luck. You know, you can do everything right. You can never eat an, you know, eat a carcinogen in your life, and you can still get cancer. Um, but at the same time, um, you're gonna get through it. You're gonna get through it. You're gonna you're gonna see the other side of it, and it you're here now, so you might as well enjoy it. Like there's so much stuff to be worried about in this world. Like, you know, you I've really been the ego of like being, the center of the universe for your life, like went out the window for me. Like, and that maybe that's the other thing that I lost was that, that feeling about, right, look, the world's going to keep going, the world's going to keep turning. It doesn't revolve around me, and it's, you know, you've got I've got so much to be thankful for, like, my wife, my kids, my family, my friends, and like everyone has been amazing. It's been a crap time, but like everyone has been amazing. And if nothing else, like it made me appreciate life so much better, and do the thing. And it's just like, let's just do it. Like just that, you know, go and just enjoy life. I'm sure there's great teams everywhere. So yeah, trust your doctors, trust your nurses, trust everybody, who are looking out for you. Trust the cancer researchers. Like, I did that. I, like it can happen to anyone, I suppose. And it does happen to anyone and everyone, unfortunately, like is, you know, has cancer in their life at some point. So, it's not a death sentence by any means. It's not a fun ride, but the ride ends and you go on living.